What's going on, y'all? Country Gaming Network here, bringing you another episode of our Magic Mondays. Today's going to be a deck tech review. It's kind of a deck that I've put together and also seen played, but I've taken some parts out, put some parts in, stuff like that. But if you're tired of playing your basic mill decks, this is kind of a twist on a mill that's really good, actually. So let's go ahead and get into it. First off, I just run a one of a fog bank. You know, you got to have some kind of creatures to stand up. You know, this will have a bunch of creatures in this deck, but this one's really good because it's going to help you stay alive through your mill. So we got one of those. I just threw this in here because I figured the more the mill, the more the merrier. So basically, it's soul bonds. It's got soul bond on it, and when you pair it with another creature, both creatures have, you tap them, and the target player puts the top two cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So that's pretty nice. I only got one of those. We run two Archaeomancers just to pull back our instants or sorceries we use. So that's pretty sweet. You could put 4 in here if you want to, but I found it really hard to find room for everything we have in here to add more creatures. So, but it's up to you. And then no mill deck is good without 4 Jace's Phantasms. For 1 blue mana, you're going to get a 5/5 creature regardless, because it's got flying and it gets +4/+4 as long as opponent has 10 or more cards in his or her graveyard. Yeah, that's going to happen. So you're going to be getting 1 mana 5/5s. So that's an essential must in the deck. And here's the other piece that has to happen. I thought I had 4 of them in here. I guess I only got 3. But these have to be in here. Hedron Crabs. For 1 blue mana, basically, whenever a land hits the battlefield, whenever a land on your side hits the battlefield, target opponent or target player mills the top 3 cards of his or her library. So definitely I would suggest put 4 of these in here, if anything. I only have 3 right now. So that's pretty good. I run a 4 of a Shriekgeist. For 1 in a blue, it's a spirit flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, the player puts the top 2 cards in the graveyard. Now, just remember, guys, all of these cards that are putting cards from the opponent's library to the graveyard. It's important for a couple of our cards we have, but this is really good because it's flying. So you figure you're going to get through with something, because not a lot of people play against flying or have answers to flying a lot of the time. So besides like direct counter or direct removal. We run a 2 of Consuming Apparitions for 3, a blue and a black. It has power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyards. Whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a land card. And then put those into the graveyard. So those are super good. That could be one of your finishing cards. So that's your second win condition on top of mill. We run 2 of Diregraph Captains. For 1 blue and a black, it has Death Touch, and other zombie creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever a zombie you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life. This is where our other half comes into the twist comes into our deck, guys. This has zombies in it, and not a lot of zombies, but it has a lot of ways to produce zombies, and I'll show you that here shortly. But these help really good. You could put 4 of. I had 4 of them in there, but I found them to be, not worth. And this is your next win condition. This card is amazing. Undead Alchemist for 3 and a blue. It's a zombie. If a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And then whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from his or her library, exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. This card is amazing. So basically, anytime you have zombies attack and they deal combat damage, they don't deal damage, they just make them mill that many cards. And for every creature card that hits the graveyard from that mill, you put another 2/2 black zombie onto the battlefield. So definitely run 4 of these. And they're not legendary either, so you can have them out on the field and it doubles it. That's so sick. I run 1 Jace memory, Adept. That's all you really need. You plus them by 1, draw a card. Target player puts the top card of his or her library in his or her graveyard. And 0, target player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. That's what makes him so sick right there. And then for his ultimate, any number of target players each draw 20 cards. You're not going to be using that. You're going to be using these two, really. More than likely, you're going to be using 0 a lot. But, you know, you could run 2 or 3 of these in here and it would be fine. There's just not a lot of room. And that should be, yes, that's our creature. That is our creature base. Now on to one artifact we have. You don't really need this in here. I just threw it in here because for 2 colorless and 3 and tap it, target player puts the bottom card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If it's a creature, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. So instead of milling them from the top, you can mill it from the bottom too. So it's like up-down mill, basically. It's not bad. We run 1 enchantment. It's an enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, put 2 cards, library in the graveyard. This can be taken out. It's not necessary, but also this is kind of budget, but if you want to spend a lot of money, you can go buy 4 Glimpse the Unthinkables. I think it's, right now, I think they're probably like $20 a piece. $15, $20 a piece, 10, 15, 20, something like that. But for a blue and a black, it'd fit into this deck, but for a blue and a black, target opponent, I think mills the top, it's either mills the top 10 or the top 20. I don't know. I'll try to put a picture somewhere in here to show you what it is. If not, then look it up. Glimpse the Unthinkable. It's an amazing mill card, but it's just like the most powerful mill card ever created, and I'm just not paying that much money for it, so. But on to our instants and sorcery spells. We run 2 Vile Rebirths for 1 black mana. Exile target creature card from a graveyard, and you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So for the cards that, if you have an Undead Alchemist out, and the cards that aren't creatures, you could use these and get a little bit more from it. So just run 2 of those. Now we're coming into our mill cards. I run a 4 of Dream Twist for 1 blue. You can make them put the top 3 on the top, or top 3 on their library into the graveyard, and then you can flash it back for 2 and do the same thing again. So basically, you can, for 3 mana, you're milling them for 6 cards. That's not bad. So you run a 4 of those. Run 4 of Thought Scour for 1. Target opponent puts the top 2 cards of his or her library in the graveyard, and you draw a card. So that's pretty sick too. Run 4 of. I don't even know why this is in here because it costs too much, but it's because it's got flashback. If you have a crap load of mana and you're, you know, trying to find something to do, you can put something like this in here. For 2 and 2 black, you can put two black zombie creature tokens on the battlefield, and you can flash it back for 7 and do the same thing. So this is the monster card here, Traumatize. For 3 and 2 blue, target player puts the top half of his or her library rounded down into his or her graveyard. So you play this on turn 5, you know they maybe have 50 cards, 55, or about 50 cards, 54, 50. No, they'll have about 40 something cards. You're going to mill 20 right off the top, so it's pretty good. I only run 3. Those were our instances, I believe. Instances and sorceries. Now, yeah. Run 2 Psychic Drains for X, a blue and a black. Target a player puts the top X cards from his or her library, his or her graveyard, and you gain X life. It's a way to stay alive, you know, to get some life back. You need to only run 2 of. I could run more of these that's coming up, but I just don't have. I mean, I have more, I just don't feel the need because you've already got so much. X and a blue and a black. Each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards. Then put all cards revealed that way into his or her graveyard. X can't be 0, so it's an easy mill spell. Run 4 of Tomb Scour. Put the top 5 cards, his or her library, his or her graveyard. It's really good. Target player does. Then you run 4 of those. 4 Mind Sculpts. For 1 and a blue, target opponent puts the top 7 cards of his or her library, his or her graveyard. And as you can see, guys, with all these spells, when you're milling, you could be possibly putting, if you have an Undead Alchemist on the board, you could be putting possible creatures on your board too. So I run a 2 of Mind Funerals for 1, a blue and a black. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until 4 cards are revealed. Then that player puts all cards revealed this way into his or her graveyard. So, run 2 of those. And then the last 2 cards is Dreadwaters. For 3 and a blue, target player puts the top X cards of his or her library, where X is the number of lands I control. So, got a lot of lands, you can get some cheap mills out. Now we're going on to our land base, guys. I run 3 basic swamps. I run 8 basic islands. You could always upgrade this with, you know, sack lands, fetch lands, all that shit, but I run 3 Dimir Guild Gates. This is a pretty good card to use your extra mana on. I run 4 of the Nephalia's Drown Yard. It adds 1 colorless mana, but for 1, a blue and a black, tap it. Target player puts top 3 cards of his or her library graveyard. So if you run out of cards, which you're probably going to run out of gas a lot, this can be used as a mill spell as well every turn. And then our last card is just for a little bit of it's Piranha Marshes. I run 4 of. Enter battlefield tap. They count for 1 swamp, but when it enters the battlefield, target player loses 1 life. So it's a way to get some life away from them. But other than that, guys, that's it for this deck tech. Let me know in the comments below what you think. This is Country Gaming Network signing off. See y'all later.